Hey everybody, it's me, Joya. I'm here today to talk to you about all things real estate. We're here to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And today we're going to talk about being a new investor. Yes, one upon a time, I was a new investor, very green to the game. You know, I had to learn my way through, just like anybody will. But I want to kind of share some of my experience with you about what happened at my first adventure of being a new investor and all the things that I kind of went through. I think it'll be very helpful and beneficial to you. I mean, when I bought my first property, I was very excited. You know, I already was a homeowner. I bought my own home at 25. I kind of knew a little bit about real estate because my mother and grandmother both was in real estate, but in different ways. They wasn't doing the type of real estate that I was interested into. And I wanted to kind of jump in the water and kind of see how it is. And then I talked to one of my friends and she became a partner with me, and we started out on this adventure of being investors, very green investors. I mean, she had a little bit more experience than I had at the time, so she gave me some insight and some input for that way, you know, helping me to guide me a little bit. So I went out and I bought 2 properties. Can you believe it? I bought the first property, was a Fannie Mae property, and it was a 1-level property that had 2 bedrooms, had a huge yard, had no basement. And I was like, oh, this would be easy. You know, I had renovated my own house when I bought my first house. I could see everything, but we actually did a little bit more than just the general cosmetic stuff. So we got the property and we renovated the property. We made it into a colonial, which is 4 bedrooms, 3 foot baths, and it had no basement, but it had a huge yard. So before we got started, there's some things I had to do that I didn't know I had to do, such as I had to get architectural drawings, I had the home inspection, of course, I had to get a contractor on board that would do the work for me. Then we had to get after repair value appraisal, of course. So once we got all those things started, I had to put all those pieces and stuff together. I was able to get started. But then once I wanted to get started, I couldn't get started because, you know, when I went to the property, there were items and stuff there that the bank had there, but I thought by me going to close and purchase property, I also asked my realtor to put into the contract to remove, like, you know, all the stuff from the property. Of course, that did not happen. So when I got there was all this stuff all over the property. So this was like my first surprise incident I had to address right away because my contractor needed to get into the property. So here it is, I'm at this house, I had to clean out the house, and I had to clean out this huge yard. So, you know, I'm removing all this equipment and all this other stuff. And then I looked around the back, I see this huge half of a yacht boat. I was like, this come with the property? They was like, yeah, it's yours. I was like, huh? My property? So I had this huge boat. And I was like, okay, my God, what I'm gonna do with this boat? It's bad enough I had to like call my friends and family, kind of help me to get all this stuff out of the property, because whoever the owner was, they had like all this equipment and it was a scatter everywhere inside and out. So I had to get all this out the way because the contractors needed to get in to do what they had to do. So, but as I mentioned to you before, I not only bought one property, a bank property, which was Fannie Mae, I bought a second property, which was a HUD property. So, and I bought these properties back to back. I was like, oh my God, I was so excited. I got both of them into them at the same time. That is really a no-no because I was very overwhelmed trying to get all that. We'll discuss about that a little later. So anyway, I was able to move the boat from that property to the other property. So I had to figure out who was gonna get it. I had to call around and got someone that does boats, and they moved the property, moved the boat from that property to the other. So that was done. Now the contractor's able to get started. I was excited. I was like, okay, we're getting started. And he's doing all the different things. I'm there, I'm talking to people, I'm picking out, you know, going back to the store, picking out stuff from the store, trying to make sure they put exactly what's there that's on the architectural plans. You know, of course, we had some surprises and things and changes that we had to do because the county wanted to do certain changes, which is fine. That will happen at any investment property, as I learned, for us to make these changes so we can be approved. So all this was going along good. Like I said, I bought the property right after my birthday. It was in February, so it was cold outside. And then the weather started to change, and the contractor was like, okay, Ms. Johnson, you need to come over here because we got all this grass. I said, what do you mean? You know, and now of course, you know, I know you have grass. I have a house. My yard's a little bit smaller than this property. So okay, I got a lawnmower go over there. But oh no, my lawnmower was not going to handle the grass that I encountered over there. That grass was so high, it was up to my waist. I was like, oh my God, what I'm going to do. I had to get some, people out. I had to call landscape company to be able to help me to get the grass cut. First, I thought I could do it myself, and that was like, no, that's a no-no. My uncle, my family, they couldn't cut the grass. The grass was just so crazy. So I got the grass cut. Like I said, it was a huge, huge yard. It was like in a suburb country, setting. So I had to get all the grass cut, the trees and stuff cut back so the contractor could get in, continue to do the work they had to do, adding the second level to the property and everything. So we got all that situated. I was like, okay, I'm ready. We still going. And then I had a bill that came in. Of course, you had bills with the project, but I had this tax bill, and I was like, why I got this tax bill? I know I had a tax bill because I went to closing. I knew what I had expected. I see what the tax said on the public record. But there was another tax bill. And I was like, what's this about? I had to call the title company. And then I come to find out inside of the legal description, which I kind of talk about with land, there was a hidden another half an acre of property that ran with this property. So now I have another half an acre, which made the property an acre of property, but it was separated by tax IDs. And I had to figure out what I was going to do with that property. Was I going to sell this property with this property? So I kind of talking over my partner, and then I had to go find an engineer. At this time, this is when I'm actually starting to get into land. I had to get an engineer to help me to figure out what I can do with this property. And I was able to try to prepare this property to sell. But in order for me to do that, I had to do something that's called a line adjustment. And it's not a subdivision, it's a line adjustment because the property is already subdivided. And I had to adjust the line adjustment to square off the property so that each property will be squared off equally, and it won't be any confusion between the properties when I do decide to sell the properties to two different owners. So I did that, but then there was another issue because the front property had public water and sewer, the back property only had water. So then I had to figure out what I was going to do about that. So I had to go back to the engineer. He told me what I need to do. He said I had to do something that's called a utility easement. And I was like, what does that consist of? And he was like, well, what you would do, we would write up a utility easement, and basically the sewer in the front will be an easement. So that way it will go across the property land, which will run across the property, the front property that we have with the house on it, we're renovating, and it will go towards the lot in the back, which means that will have to be recorded with the first house as well as recorded with the land deed. So that way whoever buys the second property will have access to the sewer on the front part of the property, which is actually across the front of the property line. So I had to get that done. I had to get that recorded with the title company after the engineer did all the actual physical work and drawings and stuff for it, which had to be attached to the easement utility agreement that had to be attached to each deed. So once that was done, now I was in a position of being able to have each property prepared because I was able to do everything I needed to do for the first property and everything I needed to do with the second property. So I got everything in order. I'm preparing, both properties. But the first property I was preparing, to sell. I haven't quite prepared the land yet, but I had all the things in place for it. So I went ahead and got everything done, and we put the property on the market. We got a buyer. I was like, okay, I'm so excited now. I got a buyer. I was like, okay, I really got this going. And we went to closing. But before we went to closing, both parties had went through the walkthrough. I went through the walkthrough. My buyers went through the walkthrough with their agent. We went to closing. I was excited about that. I told the buyer to say, I need to go back to the property. I got to get my table, my chairs, stuff that I had left there from the open house when we did the open house for the property. And I told them I was going back that same day, right after the closing, to get those things out. And the realtor who listed the property is going to remove the box. So I said, okay, fine, let's go. We went back to the property. Me and my partner went back to the property and was going to the property. And I was like, that door don't look right. Why that door look like that? So, and it looked a little ajar, and I wasn't quite sure. I was far away, and I got the car, and I got to the door. Then I noticed that the door was like tilted, turned, and it was open. And I was like, why is this open? Like I said, I couldn't figure that out. But then when I opened the door, I was like, oh my God. I was like, oh my God, what is going on here? I opened up the door, and all the appliances were gone. Everything, the garbage disposal, the microwave, the stove, the washer and dryer. I mean, everything was gone. And you can see where they had tore everything through the front door. That's why the door was ajar and everything was damaged on the front door. So I was freaking out. I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? I just went to closing. I just sold this property to these people. But technically I was the owner of the property when I went to closing, and the buyer has to buy the property in the same condition as it was received. So I had to contact the buyer agent. I was like, oh my God. I was like, oh God, please be with me on this because this was just so crazy. And I had to figure it out. I had like 72 hours to get our stuff situated. I had to order new appliances. I had to, get them delivered right away. I had to get them back installed. I had to get the contractor out there to fix the door, to put a new door, everything had to be done. So that was money that I had to spend right away and, to get it repaired so that way it can be the same condition. But the lesson of that is that, I never put any type of security system on the property. I had different contractors there. I had different survey people there. I had landscape people there. I had people moving bulk trash. I had so many people come in and out the property. And it didn't kind of dawn on me that I needed a security system. Because like I said, I was green. I didn't know. I feel like, the property was not really in a city. It was like in a suburb. But it had neighbors too, and they could be watching the house as well. But it taught me that I need to have some type of security system. As soon as I got power to the house, I should have some type of security system, installed to protect the property. So that was my lesson that I learned, and to prepare me going forward not to make the same mistake. I just want to kind of let you know that this whole experience was a great experience for me as a new investor. I was a homeowner, but an investor is a little bit different because it comes with a lot of more, responsibilities and things that I had to do and manage at the same time. I was, very glad that I went through it, but I want to kind of share with you. But if you are interested in doing investing, I have a great course on my YouTube page I had taught many years ago. It's very detailed. It tells you from step to step to step to get you started. Share some of my experiences in there. Go check it out. It's on my YouTube. Subscribe. If you have any questions, you can inbox me. You can give me comments. I'll be glad to talk to you. Until next time, I am Joya, the Extraordinary Realtor, as well as the Land Queen. Just keep following me. Keep checking me out. And I look forward to sharing some of my other stories, especially about my other property I did as a new investor with you next week. Until next time, all things real estate.